Is California destroying itself with irresponsible policies? Is it really losing population and jobs? What about inflation? And what about sky-high California taxes? Are they actually that high? This gets heated and contentious. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if we virtually sat down with California Governor Gavin Newsom and grilled him on all of this? Or better yet, today we're going to have an experienced antagonist make him explain all this while he sits in a chair. That's exactly what you'll get to see here with Fox News' Sean Hannity grilling Governor Newsom straight from the governor's executive mansion in Sacramento. So it gets a little hostile. Here we go. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold, Get Rich Education founder, Forbes Real Estate Council member, and longtime real estate investor. I also host the weekly Get Rich Education podcast, which is different from this show. That way you can listen to me on the go with your Get Rich Education mobile app or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm going to jump in here like a referee at times to provide you with context and check some facts, but I'll mostly let them go at it today. We start with 90 seconds here on immigration, which is obviously a housing issue. We are a real estate channel because all these immigrants must be housed somewhere.
I don't know how you reconcile some of these differences. Now, you either believe in secure borders and law and order, and people that would want to come into our country have to do it legally. I'm the product of that. Right. Or there are people that want open borders. You believe in defund, dismantle, no bail laws like cities like in New York, where the show originates from, or you believe law and order, safety, security is a prerequisite for the pursuit of happiness. You want energy independence, or you don't want any domestic energy production. I mean, how do you reconcile?
Well, I don't see those binaries at all. Quite the
contrary. You don't see it at all?
No, I don't. I mean, I want border security. Democrats want border security. We also want comprehensive.
But you don't want any walls.
I want comprehensive immigration reform. I want to actually address the issue more comprehensively, just like Ronald Reagan did in 1989. Just like, and with respect, Sean, you promoted yourself with the Gang of Eight and bipartisan legislation that got 68 votes in the Senate, only to die in the House, that could fundamentally address this issue, which is the issue. So I don't see those.
But I always had as my position, build the wall first. You're against building any wall.
I know. I have no problem with the 650 plus miles we have on border walls. I come from a state with the largest, San Ysidro is the largest land port in the Western Hemisphere. I don't need to be educated on the issue of the border or issues of immigration policy.
Now, it gets more contentious as we go on, but so far the interviewer, Sean Hannity, it seems like he's all over the place with his questioning. Let's look at a U.S. map a while here. California is a border state, of course, but it seems to be other states, Arizona and Texas, that make more news about the border. More immigrants over the border, whether you like that or not, that's going to mean more housing demand in America, of course, and that's why real estate investors want to pay some attention to those policies. And it affects more than just border towns, as you've seen immigrants bust from the Mexican border northeast to New York City and elsewhere. What about Newsom running for president? And then I'll get into the economy, inflation, and taxes.
Does your phone light up with, Gavin, you need to get in this primary? He's not able to run. He's not up to the job.
Look, everybody has their quiet chatter, and everybody's out there rooting for America. I'm rooting for our president. I have great confidence in his leadership.
I don't want him to fail.
He's been able to accomplish.
I think his policies are failing.
CHIPS Act, Science Act, do you oppose that?
I will tell you, on every measure, from the economy, inflation, borders, energy, national security, he's missing in action.
Let's talk about them in order.
Hang on.
I want to challenge the premise. You said the economy, 13.1 million jobs he's created. More.
These are post-COVID jobs. Okay. You know that. That's an artificial number.
No. Then let me stipulate this as an opportunity to engage civilly on this.
Okay.
Fair point. Your president, Donald Trump, lost 2.6 million jobs during his 4 years. We've created 13.1 million. Fine, you can maintain a COVID frame. How about the fact that Joe Biden's created more jobs, 6 times more jobs than the previous 3 Republican presidents combined?
Are you going to tell me,
Sean,
that the average family, where we have 2/3 of Americans now living paycheck to paycheck,
it was 70% under Trump? That was
That's not
70%.
true.
It was
Under Donald
70%
Trump,
under Donald Trump. living
Pre-COVID,
paycheck
we
to
had the
paycheck.
lowest unemployment rate for every demographic.
We have the lowest black unemployment in history, and you and I are living with the lowest unemployment in our lifetime, Sean.
We had it for every demographic, and the economy was
Black unemployment's record low under Joe Biden.
Okay. We had historic low after historic low under Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. I mean, but he's
what I don't want to have
Trump's
happen.
clock, Biden, in terms of the progress in job creation. Look at what he's done on jobs.
What would you grade Joe Biden's presidency? Because you're at odds with the American people and the Democratic Party.
I'm just dealing with the facts. I'm dealing with the facts.
What is your grade for
I'm
him?
going to go back. Let's talk. You brought up 6 topics.
You got to answer some questions.
I'm answering the ones in order.
Yeah, Newsom doesn't like the question about running for president himself, and he doesn't want to give a grade to Biden's presidency either. And I don't think that Hannity liked when Newsom said, oh, okay, well, let's talk about these things in order. Well, all right, we're about to talk about them in order. The economy, inflation, and more. And you'll see that I stay above this partisanship stuff. We avoid the petty, divisive material here at Get Rich Education. I even avoid using words like Republican and Democrat. Instead, what's the content of your character and what's the quality of your ideas independent of these labels? Suffice to say, a lot of politicians that came into power during the health crisis, they can try to take credit for a comeback in jobs, in the economy, and decelerating inflation all since then. But how much of it had to do with a waning health crisis and how much of it had to do with anyone's policies? With this in mind, note that Gavin Newsom became the governor of California back in January of 2019. So that's exactly how long it's been. Let's get into the economy and inflation, and then later this turns back more to California specifically.
You brought up the economy. On the economy, let's talk about the economy.
You want to give him an A?
Inflation, stubborn around the globe. Let's talk about inflation. It's down 40% since last summer, 10 months in a row, 4.9%. He was just with the UK Prime Minister at 6.9%. Is that because of Biden's
I think
Fed
Biden's
policy?
Economic and energy policies
Directly impacted the UK's inflation?
No, I am
Or the
telling
fact that France is 5.5% or Germany's at 6.1%? On inflation, we're moving in the right direction. On the issue of the border security,
he inherited 1.4% inflation. It went up to 40-year high after 40-year high.
Globally, because you just brought up, you were making an excuse for Trump's dismal jobs record related to COVID.
It wasn't a dismal
you won't acknowledge
jobs record.
COVID's relationship to inflation globally. And by the way, COVID and immigration impacting our inflation.
All right, as we look at the latest national inflation figures here, this is year over year by month. Higher inflation was largely the result of people getting paid to stay at home a few years ago. That means there were more dollars chasing stuff that didn't get produced because people didn't go to work. So more dollars chasing just the same amount of products, well, that already equals inflation. But no, it was more dollars chasing fewer goods, hence the recipe for high inflation stoked by the invasion of Ukraine and some other factors. Today, America's still got more open job positions than available workers. So that then is like the opposite of unemployment, but it's still part of the recipe for more inflation since companies need to offer higher wages in order to entice those in-demand workers. So then what about workers and companies leaving California? This is pretty eye-opening and gets heated.
Let me show you a list of corporate headquarters that are leaving your state in
Let's bring it on. I look forward to having this conversation.
There you go.
I'm well aware.
Corporate headquarters, they're leaving. Look at San Francisco in particular. They're closing down because they can't keep their product in the store because they're getting robbed. I got another one for you. Seasonally adjusted business applications. You always bring up Florida.
Yep.
I compared you to Florida. I think you have a higher population, if I'm not mistaken.
A significantly higher population.
Why are they doing better in business formulation?
We'll have to take a look at that in more detail.
Take a look.
I'm happy that we're looking forward. How many more of these you have? Let's go.
About 8.
Bring them on.
Bring them all on?
Bring them all on. Let's have this conversation.
Okay. Let me ask you. This is a tough question for you.
I don't think it will be. Well, let's find out.
All right. So you're the first governor in history that has had a net migration out of the Golden State. Go west, young man.
Yep.
I lived here by the way, I lived here 5 years.
Horace Greeley.
I was the poorest guy in Santa Barbara at the time in the early 80s. If you look at, I want you to really look at this and explain for the years 2021 and 2022 why Florida is taking in nearly 1,000 people a day, and you're losing 800 people a day.
Right.
They're leaving. Tell me why they're leaving your state.
So we'll stop at 3, or you want to do the whole?
No, we'll just answer one at a time.
18 states had declines in population. California's was 0.3%. You didn't bring up any of the red states that had decline in populations. It's an interesting fact, and I don't see it on here. An interesting omitted fact.
What's that?
Per capita, more Floridians moved to California than Californians moving to Florida. That, I don't imagine, is on one of your 8 slides. Let me take another stab at this. In 2021, California had 7.8% of GDP growth in this country, one of the fastest growing economies anywhere on planet Earth. This state continues to be the tentpole of the American economy. 25.6% of all American jobs came from this state in April. In the last 2 fiscal years, we enjoyed $177.7 billion in operating surpluses. We're on our way to be the 4th largest economy, eat your heart out, Germany, in the world. Number 1 in R&D, venture capital, more scientists, researchers, more Nobel laureates, more patents emanating out of this state than any other state in America. With all due respect, Florida doesn't even come close. Eat your heart out, Texas. California continues to be the dominant economic engine for the American public.
I promised you before this interview I would let you give full answers. That's a full answer.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm going to challenge it.
Good.
And the challenge is this is the first time in the history of the state that you've lost population.
Yes.
The first time.
Correct.
All right, we'll get to that shortly. California's population is about 39 million, and Florida's is 22, 23 million. I think we know that California is easily a bigger state than Florida by most every measure. Area, population, economic output, even some of the most beautiful national parks that you and I have ever visited, from Yosemite to Sequoia. But Hannity said California lost population, did they? Yep, indeed. California is one of exactly 18 states that lost population between 2021 and 2022. Like they said, in 2021, its population fell 0.9% from the previous year, and in 2022, it fell another 0.3. And by the way, California's all-time population peak was in 2020. Fact-checking some more, what Newsom said, in raw numbers, close to 13,000 more Californians moved to Florida than Floridians that moved to California. This does not account for the state's population sizes, so Newsom is correct. California has more residents than Florida, and Newsom specified he was citing per capita data. Newsom chose his words carefully. And by the way, that stat is per the Census Bureau's American Community Survey. It tracks the number of people who move from state to state each year. California now, it accounts for a ton of technological innovation. They are a powerhouse there, and they account for a massive amount of agricultural production too. Number 1 in America by far. Let's get into a reason that Californians move out. California's sky-high income taxes are a big reason why people look out. Now look, what if more than half of your paycheck was taken by income taxes? That's what happens to some Californians. Just watch as we add this up. At 13.3% for the top earners, it's the highest of all the 50 states. Now here it looks like just 12.3%, but California adds a 1% mental health services tax on your income if it exceeds $1 million, taking it up to that 13.3%. Now understand what this means. The top federal income tax rate is 37%, so with adding 13.3% on top, you've lost 50.3%, more than half of your earned income, to taxes. That's not all. Plus, you might have local income taxes on top of that 50.3% yet in California. And of course, we're only talking about one tax type here, income tax. Your dollar can be taxed other ways in California, or most anywhere for that matter. But understand that few Californians pay the 13.3%. It's only the highest earners, call them the top 1% of earners, that pay the highest tax. And that is called progressive tax policy. That's a good vocab term for you to know. Progressive means that that's where your tax burden increases with income, and that's really common in the United States. Oppositely, regressive tax policy is where your tax decreases with the more income that you make, and that's something that you don't see very often. Gavin Newsom gets grilled next. Hey, go ahead and drop a like on the video if you enjoy the perspective here. I'd really appreciate the thumbs up. Although, as usual, of course, I haven't done anything to actually deserve it. Let's get into Gavin Newsom getting queried about those high California taxes and some more on migration.
Now, I'm going to give you another sheet here. And this is about income tax.
Right.
Your state income tax is 13.3% at the highest number. I also did more digging. The top 1% of Californians pay 50% of that total income tax bill.
Yeah.
Fully half.
Roughly, yeah.
That's redistribution of wealth, isn't it?
Well, it's progressive tax
All right.
policy.
Now, look at yours, 13.3. What is Florida? What does that say? It says zero.
Well, it's factually untrue. It's not zero. They
have zero state income
top
tax.
the top 1% pay. Look, here you're promoting. Sean,
is that a lie?
No. Here's what you're promoting. You're promoting regressive tax policy. We don't believe in regressive tax policy. You're promoting one component of entire tax system, the 1%. With all due respect, you and I may pay the 1%. The vast majority of people watching don't. You pay more taxes in states like Texas for the middle class than you do in states like California.
Right now,
hold on, no, this is important.
We have too many
comparisons. The American people don't know this. We have the highest tax rate for the 1%, but middle-class families actually pay less than the majority of states in America, in California. The question is, who are you for? So who are you fighting for?
I am for. I'm just wondering, because I have homes in Florida.
Yeah.
And
you pay a lot of property tax there. Double what you pay in California. I would think twice about that.
Except if you add the millionaire property tax that you just put in L.A. County.
Well, that's a transfer tax, and we didn't do that. That was done locally.
Transfer tax is like $500,000.
I don't know if you can even get health insurance down in Florida.
So you're telling me the loss of net population.
18 states, we were number 10.3%.
And this number here, 13.3%. Now, every Californian
Which
also...
we've had for a decade.
Okay.
For a decade.
But right, and you supported it for a decade.
The public actually initiated it. It was supported by the public.
But the point is, Florida has zero. The net population growth, hang on, per Florida is almost
1%.
Is almost 1,000 new people a day, and you're losing 800 people a day.
Wait,
here's my question: is this connected to that?
No, I respect your audience too much to let them be misled on this. Your audience doesn't live in that rarefied. No,
this is a lie.
You're manipulating some fundamental facts. You're omitting the fact that the vast majority of people do not live in the 1%. You're talking about the 1% tax.
1% pays half of it.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm talking about the American people don't live there. And the reality is when they live in Texas versus California, middle class pay more than they do in the state of California.
Texas is higher tax than Florida, that's for sure.
Yeah,
but your beef seems to be with Ron DeSantis.
No, well, man, we could talk about Abbott for
the kidnapper. We'll get into that in a little bit.
But, you know, here's my point.
Yeah.
We've had a progressive tax, but I didn't establish the 13.3%. That was done before I even got here. I've opposed new increases in the top 1% tax. I oppose the statewide wealth tax. I've never been a profligate Democrat. I balance budgets. We make the hard choices. I'm a business guy starting 21
You have a deficit of $32 billion this year.
This state, we dominate in venture capital, innovation. We have the finest system of public higher education anywhere on planet Earth. We convey more talent than any place on the planet. This state, I mean, R&D, what did Tesla just do? They moved back into the state of California. Disney's moving their jobs back from Florida in the state of California. You didn't acknowledge per capita more Floridians coming back to California than Californians going to Florida. This was anomalous. 18 states saw a decline. I love this state. Don't count us out. I've been hearing this bashing all my life.
I am not, but I have a list of all the state headquarters, and I'll scroll them on our screen. Good. And you could take a look at them. These are all the corporations that have left your state.
And we're creating
their corporate headquarters, one after another after another. There's a lot. So what I'm pointing out is...
How many jobs are we creating? How many unicorn companies? How many IPOs? 3 times Florida, twice the number of Texas. Don't omit all of the facts.
Okay,
I'm
asking you not to admit all the facts. So we have all these corporations. Let me give you a list here. Here's the whole list. Tesla, Apple, Nestle,
Tesla
Oracle.
just moved their world headquarters for R&D back
their
here.
business headquarters out of your state.
Yeah, and how many jobs they created in
the whole list I gave you.
And how many jobs left with them? How many jobs?
Would you like to keep it?
No, but you need to know. None. It was insignificant, inconsequential. We create more companies every single day, more billionaires.
I'm scrolling these companies.
No, 1/2 of America's $1 billion valued companies are in the state of California. This state economy has outperformed the nation, 3.1% in the last decade, 2.1% nationwide. I've been hearing this nonsense for half a century, literally half a century.
But they've
People
only
counting
left
us
in
out.
recent years.
How many have we created? How many new IPOs? How many new opportunities? How many jobs were taken out of the state of California when Tesla moved its headquarters? You don't know that because it was insignificant.
A lot of corporate headquarters have recently left California because there's a high cost of living, and a lot of California cities have a homeless problem and a crime problem, and there's corporate taxes to look at as well. You know, maybe the best thing that I can say about California here is that just like California produces a lot of walnuts, they then have a lot of walnuts that they can afford to export. And if California produces a lot of jobs, then they have a lot of jobs that they can afford to export. Let's compare California on some maps in a moment. But first, Newsom says that California's middle class pays lower taxes there than the middle class in other states. I don't know. I didn't go too deep here because I'd like to give you some room to participate and impart your state's facts here, or your nation's facts here. Maybe you'd like to weigh in on that in the comments, the state income tax rate that the middle class pays in your state or in your nation. But I'll show you California's, and I'll tell you, here we see that a married California couple making $200,000 combined still pays a 9.3% state income tax on top of their federal. Now, one thing that we're not going to do is show a red state, blue state map here to show the predominant political party of each state. Yuck. I can't stand when major media shows that. Americans say they want a nation less divided, and then that map just reinforces political schisms, the big fissure. The map here shows sales tax by state. Note that it's combined state tax rates with average local tax rates there. That's why, for example, it shows California sales tax rate is a little higher than its state rate of 7.25% because many municipalities add local sales tax as well, which can bring the total sales tax in some California areas up to as high as 10.75%. But the state average is lower, like it shows here. We look at property tax by state. Here, the darker the color, the higher the tax. You can see the top 10, meaning the worst, the highest states for property tax, and then the bottom 10, meaning the lightest, therefore the best property tax rates in the case that you are a property owner there. And I like how it shows percentages. Okay, for example, what 1% means is that on a $500,000 home, you'd pay $5,000 in annual property tax. That's what that 1% means. I've got to say, Hannity came hard, going 100% on the offense and trying to take down Newsom and California. And whether you like him or not, come on, Newsom really stood his ground. Credit where it's due. But yeah, his state still has a ton of problems. If California is on the brink of economic collapse, watch me do the interviewing, this time in a shorter California video as a geopolitical expert, and I really break it down. You can watch this one next.